moments at the right time. We're here to celebrate. We're here to uplift. Today is the day. If anything that we saw last night watching our beloved home team take it all the way into the end zone is that winners know how to win, all right? So you're a winner in this moment. So would you help me welcome at this time Dr. Freeman Williams to give us welcoming and opening remarks. Dr. Williams is the chair of the Racial Equity Consortium. Let us welcome Dr. Williams. I'm a church girl. Y'all gotta do a little bit better than that. Let us help him, Dr. Williams.
And first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? And I'm very happy to be with you. And as mentioned, I too am an adamant Eagle fan, as you can tell by my tie. And fly, Eagles, fly. But more importantly, what I'm happy to be a part of is being at this forum and unapologetic black. Obviously, I'm black. And trust me, I'm not apologizing for anything. And nor should you. Because one of the things that I learned over this weekend that just was really troubling. I was watching the TV, and I noticed someone who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. Here's a service that this individual put into the United States Congress, Maxine Waters, and she was part of a group that they were trying to get into the Department of Education's building. And they kept asking a real important question. Why can't you let me in? And you had these individuals that were there, and they never really answered the question. They just said that you didn't have an appointment. But why should any United States member of Congress, whether you're black, white, whatever, you're doing the people's business, and you should have entry to that. And to me, that just illustrates another example of the issues we're being confronted, the challenges that are in front of us. And I think, I don't know about you, but I'm not apologizing for anything. More importantly, I think what we need to do is we need to go on the offensive. And like my beloved Eagles yesterday, and like many other people that are involved in a conflict, you have to always stare a bully down, look them in the face, and when they strike, I'm not saying being overly violent, but you gotta use your mind, use your strategies, and punch back, so to speak. And we haven't to this point. And I, for one, am tired of complaining about what's happening and not strategizing to counteract that. And today is an important start. We have an opportunity collectively to identify what are the important issues for us. How can we articulate them? How can we strategize them? How can we put into place a plan that is relevant and has a long-range effect to it? And the only way we can do that is having meetings like this, and more importantly, do the following, because I know our time is short, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. Everyone in this room, we all here because we care. Each and every one of us, we need to find our place with our organization or individually. How can we make a difference? And how can we stop allowing others to set the agenda and for us to not have a real focused plan towards it? So on behalf of the Black Elective Caucus, the Black Caucus, and the Racial Equity Consortium, we are glad you're here. But make no doubt about it, the work starts now. The planning starts now. And one of the things we have to do is, I'm going to be the messenger. All of us are going to be engaged, but all of us are not going to get individual credit. But guess what? That's okay. Because it's not about who's out front and getting credit. Because if we learn this from our civil rights forefathers and mothers, they did something that hopefully we'll be able to do, is they mobilized together. and the Dr. Kings worked with the Roy Wilkinses and other leaders throughout, and none of them during that period, they didn't worry about who's getting a TV pub, who's getting all the attention, who's the main speaker and all that other stuff. That is irrelevant, not important, and we cannot invest our time in that because what we're involved in is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And we're dealing with people that have a playbook that goes back to the days of George Wallace, Rom Thurman, Don Ennis, Don Eastland, and others that were that led the way in terms of segregation and taking away rights from others. And so the current iteration of that, they're not doing anything new, but we have to be strategic and we have to work together and we have to model what our forefathers did in the 60s, 70s, and beyond so that they cannot roll back the carpet. So thank you very much. Welcome. I'm glad to be a part of this group. And let's get ready and let's get fired up and ready to go. Thank you. Oops, that's yours.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. He's a tremendous staple in our community. And how do we celebrate the fathers that are paving the way? We make some noise for them. He's doing incredible work in our state. He is one of our pioneers. So, saints and friends, we want you to know that you're in the living room of your family. And so there's no reserved seating. There's no VIP seating. You are welcome to sit as close as you need to be or wherever you need to sit, that we are family in this movement together, okay? So make the adjustment as necessary. So without further ado, would you help me welcome this wonderful, amazing woman who is the chair of the Delaware Black Legislative Caucus, one of the reasons we're here today, Representative Kendra Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to try not to touch the microphone because of germs. Again, thank you all for being here this afternoon. I am Representative Kendra Johnson, and as mentioned, I am also the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. I bring you greetings from the entire Delaware Legislative Black Caucus, from our founding mother, Representative Stephanie T. Bolden, to our vice chair, Representative Caucus, as well as our secretary, Senator Pinckney, and the 17 members of the Black Caucus. Did you hear that? 17 members of the Black Caucus. And then, of course, that membership includes the first Black Madam Speaker, Representative Melissa Minor Brown. Yes, yes. I want to use my brief time with you all today to simply set up the backdrop for some of the conversations that we'll hear this afternoon. In of 2020, members of the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus stood on the steps of Legislative Hall to unveil our Justice for All agenda, highlighting injustices that Black and brown people face. Many of our colleagues showed up and stood with us on those steps in support and in solidarity. It must be noted that those colleagues came, stood in 100-degree heat with us without knowing exactly what our Justice for All agenda is. They just knew that they had to be our ally. Our Justice for All agenda was a set of legislative priorities to address systematic racial justice, police brutality in the wake of the murder of George Floyd and other prominent deaths that occurred during that time. We pledged to support a wide array of reform, including the establishment of task forces, the Law Enforcement Accountability Task Force that would evaluate accountability and systematic issues affecting African Americans. The Black Caucus has accomplished a lot of historic and significant reforms, and we acknowledge that there is still work to do. 14 pieces of legislation from our Justice for All agenda priorities and reforms have been passed by the General Assembly, and a number that are also the byproduct of that work. I just want to highlight a few for you. Banning chokeholds, passing an Equal Rights Amendment preventing discrimination based on race, color, and national origin. The Crown Act, requiring officers to wear body cameras, raising the minimum age for prosecution of juveniles, making Juneteenth a state holiday, automating our expungement process, post-police officer standards and training commission, and LEABOR, the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights. There are so many amazing pieces of legislation that have already been passed as a result of the work of Delaware's Legislative Black Caucus and the work that they do on your behalf. Stay tuned. We are not done, but we need you too.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. At this time, will you turn your attention to the screens? There's a special woman that wants to give you a special greeting, none other than our U.S. Senator, I'm going to call Congresswoman, but Lisa Blunt Rochester. Come on, let her hear us in D.C. Come on, we can do a little better while they get the sound adjusted.
Leadership in our state, as well as your service as conference chair. I wish I could be with all of you today in person, but the Senate is in session, so I greet you virtually. To the entire Black Legislative Caucus and the Racial Equity Consortium, we are grateful for your work in uplifting our communities each and every day. And to all in the room, welcome to the 2025 Delaware Black Legislative Caucus Conference, and happy Black History Month. It's fitting that you are all gathering at the Delaware State University, one of our nation's leading historically Black academic institutions, under the leadership of the incomparable Dr. Tony Allen. Each of you in the room serve as inspiration to the next generation of leaders being taught right there at DSU. I'd also like to acknowledge all of my fellow elected officials, including Delaware Legislative Black Caucus Chair, Representative Kendra Johnson, Speaker of the House, Melissa Minor Brown, Majority Whip, Senator Elizabeth Tizzy Lockman, and Representative Stephanie T. Bolden, the founder of the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus. The theme of today's gathering is our agenda, Unapologetically Black. We are celebrating our culture, our history, and our excellence, while embracing our roots, standing tall, and running our leg of the race. And in 2025, we will need some Jesse Owens level energy. As folks try to erase history and shut down efforts for the advancement of all, let us use the progress we've made as the fuel to propel us through these times and into a brighter future. After all, there is power in the collective. And what we know is no one person makes change. We all have to do it together. And together, we are building on the dreams of our ancestors for progress and power. Like me, I know that all of you in the room do not take this responsibility lightly and know that we were born for such a time as this. Alongside my sister, Senator Angela Alsobrooks and Senator Cory Booker and Raphael Warnock, we are all making history in DC as well as in Delaware. Representing the 1 million people of Delaware, serving our Constitution and defending our democracy embodies the hope and light that Dr. King spoke of, especially during our darkest moments. So make no mistake, we face challenges ahead. I'm hard at work in the Senate, right alongside you in this fight. And I will be serving on 4 committees, all of which have jurisdiction over issues that impact our community in Delaware and across the country. From addressing the housing crisis, to advancing environmental justice, to reproductive health and reducing health disparities and economic inequality. I will continue to be a strategic partner in our efforts to protect our community from the worst impulses of this next administration. The only way we will succeed is if we work together. But it's not just about defense. Today, you will discuss a bright vision for our future and action steps to get there. As we prepare for the road ahead, I am reflecting on the lives and legacies of so many of the giants that we've lost recently, those who have been tireless in their efforts on behalf of our communities. Maurice Pritchett, Richard Mouse Smith, and my dad, the late Ted Blunt, to name a few. They have now passed the baton to us, and there is no greater honor to them and to honor their lives and their legacy than to commit to the continuing of the work. That's what this is all about. That's what you're all doing today. And I wish you all a productive conference, and I am ready to run our race together.
We couldn't be at the best HBCU in the nation without the best university concert choir. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the Delaware State University Concert Choir for 2 selections. Y'all gonna do a little bit better than that. Y'all quiet, church. Come on. Come on. Y'all was screaming and hollering last night. Come on, let's celebrate these babies. They certainly deserve a standing ovation for that. Let's give it up for the University Choir.
I'm going to live with God.
Well done. Come on, well done. Great job. They said God, and I almost felt church in here. Awesome job. Come on. Awesome job. Blessings to you, university students. Thank you for your work. May God bless what you guys are doing. Thank you so much. At this time, the train is moving. The time that we've all been here for is for some great discussion. So would you help me welcome the economic empowerment panelists that are coming to the stage? Senator Darius Brown, Representative Larry Lambert, and Representative Carrie Evelyn Harris. Come on, celebrate them. They're doing the work. They're in the trenches for your community. They need to be encouraged too. All right, y'all know what to do. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. So good to see everyone this afternoon. I want to make sure you guys can hear me because there's no monitor, so I can't hear myself. Can you guys hear me? You're good? Okay. All right. So the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus established an African-American task force a few years ago that put out some recommendations around economic empowerment. And part of those recommendations was around how we can create opportunity in the state of Delaware for African Americans. I absolutely believe that opportunity lives here in the state for us, and it's about how we coordinate and are intentional about the work that we do around economic empowerment in our state. I do just want to pause because I was concerned, and this is a living room conversation amongst family as we talk about an unapologetically Black agenda. And I believe there is nothing more unapologetically Black than the Negro National Anthem. And hearing that anthem is something that should cause all of us to rise. It should be a automatic, knee reflection to stand when we hear that. And so I want to admonish all of those that were here, those that did and didn't. Whenever you hear the Negro National Anthem, you should stand. It is about being unapologetically Black every time we hear those words because of our forefathers and how they suffered and what they experienced. For me and my colleagues and all of us in this room to be here and to consider ourselves the exceptional African Americans that we consider ourselves to be. And so around economic empowerment, we've tried to do this work around creating economic opportunity. Part of this economic opportunity work is working within our financial system because in the state of Delaware, every financial system, every bank in the state of Delaware provides a certain amount of money into our state bank commissioner's office. And that money sits there dormant unless we activate it. And so a few years ago, we created the Delaware Community Investment Fund to activate those dollars so that African American and Black businesses can have access to that capital. In addition to having access to that capital, it's important that we also expand our pool of businesses and financial institutions in the state of Delaware so that we have our very friendly minority-led CDFIs, but also our traditional banking institutions that understand the power of commerce, the power of our community, and want to do business with us. In doing that, we have so many bright entrepreneurs in our state, African Americans, that are doing real business and they just need access to capital. And so we created a seed fund here with Delaware State University and Bronze Valley Lab. And so we have African Americans now going through an intensive accelerator of about 8 weeks to get their business infused. And now they are operating their businesses not just in Delaware, but their businesses are now international, some of them doing import and export and a bunch of other work. Locally, because the city of Wilmington is a part of the area that I represent in Delaware State Senate, we created a Northeast Wilmington Revitalization Fund with True Access Capital. We invested $3 million into that fund. And over the course of about 18 months, we created over 100 jobs while helping minority community centers and small businesses with the capital to start a business, to refurbish their business, to expand doing business in the Northeast area of the city of Wilmington. And then our Delaware Grocery Initiative, which allows us up and down the state of Delaware to address food deserts. And so we've put 200,000 last year. We have another $1 million this year in epilogue in the budget to provide access to fresh food for our corner stores and grocery stores in the state for minority-owned Caribbean grocers, African grocers, Hispanic grocers. They now have access to capital to start their business, to expand their business, which previously did not exist. And so I'm thankful to our previous governor, for us Wilmington folk, our mayor, John Carney, for support of that. And then addressing the talent dividend. We have so many talented people up and down our state, and we need to leverage our adult education institutions in our state. And so we've infused our adult education institutions so that we can provide more adult education, working out of our VOTEC adult education divisions of our VOTEC high schools in each county of the state. We've done all this work as a Black Caucus just around economic empowerment, and it's not just the individual work of the legislator that you see that sponsored the bill, but it's the collective work of all of us working together. I will say that in the history of our state, we have never had more African Americans represented in the Delaware General Assembly. And that is because of the communities that you represent that support us, that have supported us, not just vote for us, but actually really believe in the work that we're doing and trying to do. And so for this panel, it's important for you to see the state up and down the state. You have Wilmington and Newcastle, you have Dover and Camden, and you have Claymont. You have, a very large breadth of the state and how our communities are benefiting from the work that we're doing. And I know that Representative Lambert continues to do that work around a lot of the work that he's doing in Claymont as well.
Thank you, Senator Brown. I'm honored to be a member of the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus. But before I'm a member of the caucus, I'm a member of my district, the 7th District, Claymont, Brandywine 100, on the northern border, if some of you are familiar. An area that had deed covenants, an area where my family wasn't allowed to live just decades ago. And in that regard, we look at some of the ways that we weren't able to accrue wealth. We weren't able to do so through land ownership, through home ownership, because of redlining. I'm familiar with some of those original communities, the redline communities like Hickman Row in my district. And that led to some of our efforts in the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus around ensuring that with Delaware, according to the last census, Delaware is now 23.8% African American. We are now blacker than both North Carolina and Virginia. We're the 6th blackest state in the nation. And in that regard, one of the initiatives of the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus was to ensure that we look at making sure that we can have Black asset managers, Black financial institutions handling portions of our money. If we're not talking about economics and equity, we're not talking about anything. It's very important. And that's why I'm honored to serve alongside leaders that are really being unapologetic in our vision, but also in our action. That's just one of the many things that we've worked on. Representative Harris.
Senator Brown said much of what we've already accomplished. I'll add one last piece, which is really important for those of us in this room and the communities we represent, and that's the fact that now in the state of Delaware, rental history is considered when you are applying for a home. Our credit doesn't reflect our work ethic often, and we keep our families housed. And the ability for the Black Caucus to have ushered that in as a change is huge. And not just for our community. And this is about every piece of legislation that Representative Lambert and Senator Brown mentioned. When Black people lead, everybody does better. This has been the truth since Reconstruction. When it was believed that we would come for people that enslaved us, instead, we lifted everybody up. And we continue to do that. So every piece of legislation we have passed definitely lifts Black people. But there is not a race in this state that is not also lifted. When we go forward, we think of other things. Again, our collective mind. We have a collective mind as Black people. So labor unions come naturally to us, right? Because we think of the whole. And so when there's a tax on labor coming from the federal government, most especially now, It's important for our state to protect things like collective bargaining. When the Labor Relations Board is going to be defunct because, well, why protect workers? The people in the Delaware General Assembly are working to create legislation to make sure that the workers here continue to be protected. I want to flag that I understand that there are people who might want there to be more statements put out. What are we doing, right? I get that folks might want to hear a reaction to every chaotic thing that is happening at the federal level. But let me tell you, we have finite bandwidth. And we can put out a statement and do a press conference for every little thing that this current administration is trying to throw on us as a state. Or we can move with deliberate action that takes our bandwidth to write legislation that is properly worded over a statement that is properly worded so that it turns into the protections and the rights that you need. And that's what we're dedicated to do. We as a Black caucus are dedicated to it. And I can speak for the House because I am the majority leader there that we are dedicated to actual action and not to lip service. We've shown it in our past legislation and we will continue going forward. I also want to say that, especially when it comes to economics, we've seen attacks across the board on our own community and other communities that are marginalized. But we continue to be the easiest to kick. And we have learned special things to keep us in survival mode. So we're a little bit calmer than everybody else, if you haven't noticed. We've learned from our ancestors how to write code in quilts, to put maps in our hair, to read when people said we could not even exist. So we know that it's not always the most beneficial and effective to be a tsunami. It sounds sexy. But we know that a riptide is what gets us through. So I'm here to give you guys some encouragement to fight, but I'm also here to say this. Let's not let them think we are the stereotype they put on us. And this impacts our economics. You might say, Carrie, what's this have to do with economics? Because our mental state impacts what we believe we are able to accomplish. We talk about an abundance gospel, but do we really believe it? 17% of our population, just over, lives in poverty. But sometimes we think it's more than that. And we feed into that stereotype that others put on us. 70% of all degrees are held by Black women. We don't lack education. But while we have that piece, estimates considered somewhere in the negative to a few $1,000s of net wealth for Black women. There are still hurdles we have to overcome. When it comes to our Black men, we have 30% of our Black men have a felony charge. It is a setup that felonies mean issues with employment. It is a setup that felony means problems getting loans. It is a setup that a felony says you can't live in certain housing. It doesn't matter how long it's been since you've changed your life. It's the fact that in this state, did you know just 2 years in prison? You can go 2 years in prison for any number of things. There was at one point last year a bill that would say that if you stole property from somebody's porch that was over $2,000, come on now, a laptop, my iPhone probably costs that much, right? It's a felony. And if the person that you stole that piece of property from the porch was a senior or a person with a disability, it was a felony, regardless of the amount of money. Well, who steals from the porch? Some stupid kid who's it's like a dare, or someone whose life is falling apart, both of which don't need a felony to follow them for the rest of their life. That felony impacts the economics of our community. Again, we have the knowledge, but we often will talk about buy Black owned. But on average, the Black dollar stays in the Black community 8 hours. On average, it stays in the Asian and the white community 20 to 30 days. That makes a difference. We have the ability, we have the power, we are not living in poverty generally. Per capita, yeah, we're a little higher, but also per capita, we are the most innovative. We take nothing and make miracles, and always have. When we talk about the fragility of this democracy, I know we're tired of hearing it, but unfortunately, we are the savior. We understood the assignment this last election. We've understood the assignment since the inception of this nation, because even during enslavement, we believed in the ideals, even though they never actually benefited us. So when we talk about economic empowerment, when we talk about economic growth, we have to make some different choices. Where we spend our money and keep it. The percentage of the income that we save. And while we are the most educated, we need to choose the routes of education that also provide the most income. This is real. Healthcare happens to be one of the highest paid industries, and we're doing good there. And I'm proud that we are helping people. However, the majority of us are either in healthcare or social services, but the money is in engineering. The money is also in healthcare. The money is also in consulting. The money, we know where it is. We can look it up every single year. We need to encourage our children to go into these industries so that we can have a baseline that is not in the negative or the few thousand, so that our economic spending power pushes agendas. There are political PACs running throughout this state, influencing elections not just here, but across the nation, but not one is a Black PAC. If we committed, the max you can actually max out. You don't really max out of a PAC, but even if you just did $600 a year, that's $50 a month. Or if you did $5 a month, I can tell you, every elected person here, if somebody committed to $5 a month to our campaign, what a difference it would make. But the collective power, there are PACs in this state that people will fill out their questionnaires and make sure legislation is being passed on the behalf of that interest group. That they're good interest groups for the community, but Black people have voices too. They should be flocking to our meeting. They should be listening to our conversation. Economic development that helps us, legislation that helps us, helps the whole, and we have to get that message out. And I also want to flag one last thing, because I see Senator Brown saying, shut up over here really quick, sweetly. But I just want to flag one last thing, which is this. Please, please, please learn how our state works. Every level of government has different abilities to affect change. But also there are commissions at every level of government that actually write regulations. Learn about them. Figure out which one you'd like to be involved in. Elected politics is one place, but we have to be at every level of government, in every corner, at every table. And we're missing the mark on that. So that's all I got to say.
So it's important for us to show up Black in the spaces that we come into and be unapologetically Black in those spaces. The progress that we make is we need individuals that have not just benefited from George Floyd to increase their income in C-suites, but also be willing to march with us as we're fighting. And so we've seen over the last 4 years individuals that have benefited from our fight, that look like us, but that are not willing to roll up their sleeves and fight with us. And so today, this room is filled with some fighters, some participators, and some spectators. I know what's in the room. But we all need to understand that if we're really going to do this thing that we say we want to do, we have a small window that we have to take the opportunity and really make this a reality. There are so many individuals that are bald and have gray hair that have been doing this work for 40 years in this room. And I don't want all of their sacrifice, all of their hard work to be in vain, because we want to make sure that our name or our organization is at the top. of the list of who's hosting or organizing something. If you notice in this body, other than our leadership, the rest of the members of the Black Caucus are not sitting in the front of this venue. We're sitting in the back because it's about you. It's about you being here, your voices, and being and engage this community. And we want to make sure that even though we're fighting our fight legislatively, we'll still show up to the press conference. This doesn't have to be our press conference. In fact, it should not be our press conference because we have other civil rights organizations and institutions in our state that should be the voice for that. And it is our role to support them legislatively. And so you all know the adage, if we all stay in our lane, there won't be an accident. And so we try to do our work in our lane to make sure that we advance this economic cause.
And I also just briefly wanted to add a few other bills that the Legislative Black Caucus worked on as well. Not only was it the minimum wage bill that a lot of you younger individuals have the opportunity to take advantage of entering the workforce at 15, knowing that at the national level, the minimum wage is $7.25. 20 states have the same minimum wage of $7.25, which hasn't budged a penny in 16 consecutive years. 1 mile north of my house in PA, the minimum wage is $7.25, less than half of what it is here in Delaware. And we got to make sure that we are giving our young people an opportunity to enter the workforce at a viable level, so that when you put in years of service, that you're hitting a meaningful wage. One other bill that I want to share briefly is the Delaware Earns bill, establishing a state-facilitated retirement savings plan for small businesses. Over half of Delawareans don't have a retirement savings plan. Normally, you access that through your employer. But when you look at a lot of our Black-owned businesses, our Black-owned small businesses, we're oftentimes owner-operators. The salons, the barbershops, the landscapers. You don't always have access to tap in, but when we established Delaware Earns with bipartisan support, 35 co-sponsors, it established a state-facilitated retirement savings plan that everyone can plug into. So now your small businesses, you don't have to lose your talent. You can retain and attract new talent through that. And we were honored to champion that legislation as well. To find out more about that opportunity, please go to earnsdelaware.com.
Thank you. Will you help me thank our economic empowerment panelists? We're so grateful for the work that they're doing. Come on, let's celebrate them. We know that we need them. Will you repeat after me? When we fight, come on, when we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. One more time, when we fight, we win. Come on, use your dollar to win. So coming up next to the stage, let's welcome our safety. I'm thrown off because they're over there talking. Let us welcome our safety and justice panelists. We have Representative Nnamdi Chukwuka. I say it right. And Representative Franklin D. Cook Jr. Let's celebrate them and talk about safety in our justice system.
Yes. We can do better than that. Come on. This is some serious business. Today I always say, this isn't chess, this isn't checker, this is chess. This is some serious business going on. And it's a blessing that everybody's here. I haven't heard that yet, but it's a blessing that we all are here today, because we could be someplace else and we're missing work, but we're here to get some things done. What I want to talk about is my task force that I did back in 2021 during the George Floyd days and some other issues that we had in the African-American or Black or Negro area in the state. And I concentrate on the state of Delaware. I know a lot of things are going on in DC, New York, Philadelphia, but we got to concentrate on some serious issues that we have here in policing. Because that's a problem when we are shooting at cars and folks in cars. That's a problem. And I got a lot of notes on that, a lot of people trying to contact me about that. And I like to be the person, as the chair of my task force, to make sure that we listen to those voices that are voiceless. And sorry about that. Lay this down. And it's very important that we started a task force. And this task force I had 92 people in my task force. But when it came to subcommittee work, it went down to 72. And some folks went to the News Journal and said, we have no confidence in the task force. Well, you just heard a little bit from the economic folks, our legislators, that we needed to make sure that everybody got involved, even on the economic part. But I'm here to say we have moved the needle. Why do I say that? We have cameras now. And no clap on the cameras? All 54, because Townsend has a police department, must have cameras. That's very important. And when our Black Legislative Caucus goes to other seminars throughout the country, they say, how do you do it? It wasn't I, it was you all that did it. The people. The people did that. It's so important that we have these cameras, and it's been working out. The thing is, we got to put it out there transparently, to put it out to the media so everybody can see what's going on, good or bad. Another thing we didn't talk about, and we need to talk about, is transparency. That when police officers are violating human rights, that's everybody. It needs to be put out there. I'm still working on very, very hard to get a database that you can go to see the officers that have been fired or let go or what had happened in the decision. We as a people need to see that. You should be able to, if I can push a button and get a coupon for Popeyes, I should be able to push a button and see what our police officers are doing, good or bad. Because there's some good things that police officers are doing. But we have problems up and down the state, not only in Wilmington. Dover has some problems. Carrie Harris, stop it. But we do, and we need to address it, and we need to get out. When I say get out, when we have I have committee hearings. I am the chair of Public Safety and Homeland Security. That means I have committees, I have hearings, I have, laws and legislation that we got to bring forth for the people that advocates bring out. But every time, can I be real? When we talking about gun violence, everybody in the room in my committee hearings, they're Caucasian. And they're women. And they're Caucasian women. I'm just going to be real with you. I know I'm going to make some people itchy and don't want to roll up their sleeves on some issues. I don't have African Americans or blacks at my committee hearings, but we leading in deaths. I can't get them to a committee hearing. I go, where were you at? All our advocates. That includes, and I'm going to be real, you can get on me later, NAACP, the Wilmington Urban League, our black veterans. We need you at these committee hearings to hear your voice. I know they're 2 minutes, some are 3 minutes, but we need you here. You're the voice of the voiceless, and it affects our community. And I'm going to tell you something else that is real. Crime is down a little bit. A little bit. Did you hear what I said? And, I'm not going to be all the way across. It's down a little bit because I look at the numbers. I look at the numbers when you say statistically and data. I need data. I know we have feelings and emotions. I can tell a couple stories right now and make everybody in here start crying as being a police officer for 30 years. And the struggle and fights with police officers. When I came on Newcastle County Police back in 1981, there was only 7 black cops. 7. And hardly any in the state police. I was trying to get recruited through the state police, city police, and the county. And the county is our neighborhoods up north. And down here you have your own police departments, your own charters. Then you have the state police that come out to your community. But I also believe that we should also have social work dealing with our police officers. Social workers should come out there with us after things are safe. Hello? after things are safe. And mental health needs to step up. I'm going to tell you right here, and I know I'm being taped. DHSS is too big. A lot of things falls in the cracks. I believe in let's shorten it up a little bit so we can be effective in our neighborhood. We got to meet people where they are. They want you to drive all the way to Dover, go here, go there. People don't have that. So meet them where they are. That means grassroots and knock on the door. But you got to also answer the door. I have my fire department giving out free what? Smoke detectors. You knock on the door, they won't even answer the door. Because I had a child that passed away in a fire on Robinson Drive 2 years ago. So we said, let's attack all our neighborhoods on the Route 9 corridor, and we're still working on it, to give out free smoke detectors. Free! With a lithium battery that lasts 10 years. You ain't got to change the battery or try to mess with it. But we got to wake up as a people. Expungements. Let's get that up there. There you go. Senate Bill 112 and Senate Bill 111, done by myself and Senator Brown. Clean Slate Act. Clean slate. We're moving the needle. We're going up and down the state to make sure that everybody gets a chance to expunge their record. I heard Carrie talk about, it's hard to get housing. Yep, they look at your record. We got people that are adults that are in their 60s and 50s that did something when they were 12 years old, still popping up on the screen. For those trying to get housing, those trying to get jobs. And I'm talking about good jobs. It's up on the screen, and they get to see it. Or we got to watch out also that we passed about having juveniles in the newspaper. If you notice, we've been not having their pictures and stuff in the news journal, and that has to be expunged. And just because it's nolli proseque, meaning it's nolli pros or dismissed, you got to make sure it's gone. Because I can still go back and see what you did when you were 12 and 13 years old, 14 years old. So that's that pipeline we've been talking about. I don't need to talk about it. From kindergarten to where? To college. And it follows you all the day long. We've been working on that, and we're still working on it, again, with the cloud, with DTI, that's the internet folks, and SBI. So, we did a lot of things. We did a lot of things in my task force that we all should know about, and it should be out there in the media, but we don't know too much about it. I'm going to get out the way and let Nami talk, because I can talk all day. Go ahead.
Thank you, brother. Just wanted to bring to bear a few things that my brother, Mr. Cook here, mentioned. First and foremost, mental health. He mentioned mental health, and a big part of our Safety and Justice Committee, one of our strong recommendations was dealing with mental health. And at the time, our senator, our federal senator, Senator Coons, had a bill entitled Paths Preventing, Addressing Trauma with Healing Strategies. That was the bill he was presenting in the federal government. And our subcommittee wanted to model the same supports here in our community. Many of us know, and I see my good veteran here, and many veterans go off to war and they come home, and like my twin brother, who they are impacted. My brother is not the same person he was when he returned. And trauma impacts you in so many ways because of the violence that you see and the impact and that constant threat of violence. And what we said in our subcommittee was that we believe that many of our children are also being impacted by PTSD, children who live in communities that are saturated with drugs and violence, and every day they're being reminded of the violence in their communities. There are a few places in my home city of Wilmington where on your way to a school, if you're walking down to school, you pass a mural every morning with this brother's name on it, going to school. Every day you pass that mural. It impacts you. Every day you're being reminded of that trauma. So what we said is that we need additional supports, not just with our law enforcement, but for our mental health agencies, for therapists, for social workers to help provide additional supports to our family. As Frank mentioned, Representative Cook mentioned, when we started our work, when we thought about the horrible death of Mr. Floyd that we all seen and just couldn't swallow that another human being would do this to another human being, and to have it repeated so much, and we all seen it. And the first bill, one of the first bills, along with the camera bill, was our chokehold bill, to say here that in this state, our Black Caucus led the initiative to say that if an officer does that, it is a felony. It is illegal to do that in our state. That was the first bill, or one of the first two bills that we passed out of the Black Caucus. And then looking at our communities, we really took a hard look at what safety really means in our community. Representative Cook also mentioned that crime is going down. A few of the things that we really did was to focus on the illegal firearms. During our work on our subcommittee, I'll never forget, in the city of Wilmington, we had a gentleman during COVID. He was arrested with a firearm, and because of the situation where they weren't arresting people in courts, and so he was arrested again, let out 6 different times. During COVID, he was let out, and this is the same time we're having our meetings, and we're like, what can we do about this? How do we begin to change this? Because ultimately that young man was involved in the shooting, and so 6 times we touched him before he went back out to the community and committed a crime. So we were able to change a law and created what we call high cash bail. So now if you're on probation or parole for a firearms charge and you're caught with a firearm, then you have a high cash bail. So you're not being released right back out to the community. So for the past 3 years since that bill has been implemented, the shootings in the city of Wilmington have gone down. Murders in the city, gun-related homicides in the city of Wilmington have gone down for the past 3 years. Individuals say, oh, it's a lot of reasons, it can be this, it can be that. But when individuals, and they used to always say, that it's 1% of the 1% of individuals in our communities who are creating this violence. And when those individuals are away from our community begins to be a safer place for our children, a safer place for our elders. So we're focusing on what we can do in terms of illegal firearms that help reduce that stigma. Representative Cook, Representative Harris, and I have a new measure. Individuals are running around. Just happened a couple weeks ago here in Dover, just shooting up people's houses as a form of intimidation. Happened on 38th Street in the city of Wilmington recently. What we're saying is that right now, as our law is, it states that if I shoot into someone's home or into a business, into a car, if they're not in close proximity to that round, then you won't, if they are, then it's reckless endangerment, then that can be a felony charge. But if they are not, then that charge goes away and it can be reduced to a misdemeanor, and that same person can be right back out on the street. So we're changing it to say that if you fire into a round, into someone's home or into someone's car, into their business, intentional, then it's saying that is going to be a felony. A felony, unless it's a higher felony, it won't be dismissed. So it's a new charge. So what we're trying to say, and then people say, oh, the justice side of this, then we're just locking up more people from our community. And then you think about the safety side of our community. How do we create communities where our children can go to school and thrive and not be pressured by the threat of violence and the constant pressure of being harmed by illegal firearms in our community? It takes us to begin to change the laws that address firearms. So that's what really a strong focus for what we're trying to do in terms of our safety and justice recommendations. There's also one of, I'm not sure if it was still up there, but for right now in our state, our former Senator Margaret Rose Henry had a bill years ago, and to help you reduce, to clear so that you were able to vote. When you got a felony, you were able to vote. That bill, it went so far, but currently the law says if you have certain felonies, you just can't vote. Pretty much, you'll never vote again. And you say you can wait 5 to 7 years on some of them. But what we're trying to do is to change that bill. So there's another measure, which was a strong recommendation from our African American task force, to where the day you finish your sentence and you are released from incarceration, your voting rights will be restored so that you can again become a viable member of your community, engaged in your community, involved in the voting process. Those are measures that we are very strongly committed to. There is a piece of legislation that was drafted and is definitely coming back to be presented this session. We are very optimistic that we can get it across. And we're just thankful for the work that we continue to do, really focusing holistically on our community.
I'm going to go to something else real quick so I can talk all day. Another thing that we need to get involved in, our communities need to get on those review boards. I saw our Black Caucus, not congressional, sorry, our local Black Caucus pushed in my bills, our bills, I can say mine. You must have review boards. All these police departments up and down the state have started and put forward review boards. You have to come there and do your voice, hear your voice, and come out and see what's going on in your community with your police department in your neighborhood, so you can have a voice and also see what's going on in your neighborhood with numbers, again, with data and statistics, so you can talk truth and facts. We can do feelings and emotions all day, but we need to know about truth and facts and put it out with transparency. And that's very, very important because I really push for that. Our police departments, know it or not, didn't give me one pushback on having review boards in the state of Delaware. And also look at who's on those review boards that can serve our neighborhoods. That is very, very important. The other thing that we're working on, including Senator Brown, is reentry. He's pushing reentry big time right now in the female prisons. So you know what's going on when you come back out into the community. Because right now they have no clue, and I'm just being truthful, how to work it on the phone and on the computers about everything that's going on when they get out and where they're going. And of course, we could talk all day about housing in the state of Delaware. You gotta know where they're going when they get out and what's going on. And then when they finish whatever they're finishing, that they can go to, again, coming out and get their things expunged. Just like you do, they can call you up when your license is out. They send you a letter, right? When your license is done or your car is being expired with their tags. So that's very important. So I just want to end, make sure you go to your review boards and get on that expungement. Tell people all about expungements. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's thank our panelists, Representative Cook. I want to say Cookie, that's what I affectionately call him. Representative Cook, Representative Namdi, thank you so much for what you're doing in our state. We appreciate it. At this time, would you help me welcome the Health and Wellness panel? We have Representative Kendra Johnson coming back to join us, and one of our newest representatives, Kamala Smith. Let's welcome them to the stage. Two powerful Black women coming to talk to us. Let's go. I love it. Yes, light it up a little. Yeah.
Is it on now? Okay, there we go. All right, because we are supposed to be in our living room, right? So I'm just saying. You good. Okay. All right. So since we're in the living room, we're gonna make sure we're nice and comfy. It would be helpful if I had a pillow just like right there. Because when you're sitting on the sofa in the living room, don't you relax on a pillow? And sometimes even have a blanket to cover up your legs, but we're gonna make it work. So Representative Smith and I will share with you this afternoon a few of the measures that came from the Health and Welfare Subcommittee. And the very first thing that we will discuss will be maternal health here in Delaware. What I'll do first, even before I get to the statistics, they're all up there in that beautiful graphic, and I have all my materials here to keep me on time as I look at the time over there to also keep me on time. But I'll start with a story related to maternal health and being a Black woman. When I was pregnant with my twins, it was my very first pregnancy, the only pregnancy actually, and I had help. I needed help to get pregnant, and my twins are the result of in vitro fertilization. So I'm pregnant. I wake up one morning and I'm spotting, and I'm scared to death. I call my doctor. I tell them what's going on. And very nonchalant, they're like, yeah, well, come on down. We'll have you do an ultrasound. At the time, I lived in Philadelphia. My physician was in Pennsylvania, in Chester, Pennsylvania. And I did not understand for the life of me why there was no urgency around my baby's lives, around my life. And I just pretty much thought, well, maybe this is just the norm and I'm overreacting because after all, these are my IVF babies. This is my first time getting pregnant. I did not know. And only later, well, I'll go back for 1 second. So I did that, did what they told me to do, sat in the waiting room far too long to have an ultrasound. And if you know what an ultrasound is like, you got to drink a whole lot of water first because, your bladder has to be full and you got a couple babies up in there. It was not a pleasant experience. But when I left and when I knew that my babies were okay, I said, I will never go back to that doctor again. Because of my privilege and my resources, I didn't have to go back to that doctor again because I knew better. Too many of our sisters don't know better and think it's the norm and rely on their health care providers to take care of them. And for us, too many times that is just not the case. Many of you probably remember Serena Williams. Complications after her pregnancy. I believe she may have had a blood clot. And the entire time she's saying something's not right. This is what I think is going on. And she was ignored. Serena Williams, woman at the top of her game, fierce, beautiful, strong, black woman, ignored. Ignored. So while we sit here today, I really want you all to think about this. I want you to sit in it, and I want you to be of support to your black sisters. No question is a dumb question. Advocate for her, be by her side, advocate for yourself. That is what we must do. If you look, go ahead.
And may I add, if you are not able to be a support, that you encourage a sister to get a doula, that you encourage a sister to get a midwife. If you know about doulas, if you know about midwives, that you talk to them about that. That is not a common word for some people. So I just encourage you to speak up doulas, to speak up midwives. We're talking about being unapologetically black, right? It started with us. Midwifery started with us. So let's keep it with us.
All right. Like that. She just took us and made us pivot to the next thing. So the other thing related to doulas, and I'll just speak quickly to this. In 2022, the Delaware Omnibus package and the package of bills, which has been passed, it speaks to improve maternal and infant health by supporting doulas, by expanding health care for pregnant and postpartum individuals, and also assisting incarcerated women as well, which is extremely important. Another piece of legislation associated with maternal health is legislation that also acknowledges that postpartum depression is a real thing. Okay, another thing that's not real to some. Um, Critical in understanding what women could possibly go through when they are pregnant and after they give birth. So you have all of the statistics up there as it relates to maternal health in our communities. I would ask that you pay attention to that, and just as Representative Smith said, listen, if you don't have what it takes to support that sister, then make sure you connect her with someone who could. Okay? And now I think we'll go ahead and pivot. You ready to pivot? Okay, go ahead.
So I want to come to you today and talk about school-based wellness centers. Anyone familiar with school-based wellness centers? Okay, everybody didn't raise their hands. So that means that we need to get more information out about school-based wellness centers. So school-based wellness centers is a wellness center that is located inside of one of your children's schools. It's not to take the place of your physician. It's not the case. That's not what it's designed to do. It's designed to be a resource inside of the school. So if your child needs a physical exam, if your child needs to have their physical exam for sports, whatever that case may be, that is there for them. It does take insurance, but you do not have to have insurance to go to the school-based wellness center. Inside of that wellness center, there are a number of entities that are supported inside of there. So there's a practitioner there, there's a nutritionist there, there's also community health workers there. Another question polled to the audience, are you familiar with community health workers? Okay. All right, cool. So inside of that school-based wellness center, they can help a child with physical health, they can help a child with health education, nutrition, vaccinations. And the reason why I want to highlight CHWs is because these are individuals that work inside of the school, but also work inside of the community. It's not just in the school, but I'm just going to highlight the school portion because there are other entities that have community health workers. These are people that live in the community that are trusted members of the community. They are not social workers, they're not clinical. They're supposed to help you with resources. So if a child comes into a clinic and they don't have insurance, the community health worker is designed to help get that to the finish line, to help someone get health insurance. And the reason why we want to do that is we want to address health outcomes. So if you don't have insurance, then what will your health outcomes look like? They would look pretty grim, right? They wouldn't look bright. So we want to make sure that every child is connected to some health care. The school-based health center can diagnose and they can also treat because they do have some practitioners that are inside of the school-based wellness center. What else did I want to share with you? There are a number of school-based wellness centers across our state.
is, I know Representative Smith already did a call to action to the health professionals, majors here at Delaware State University, which I'm a proud alumni too. Shout out Hornets. But we need us in these spaces. I started off this school year thinking, oh, education is not a black job. I look like a fly in milk. Why is that? Why? Because our students deserve more. Coming out of this task force, one of the things that was repeated over and over is how we need to adapt and enforce culturally responsive teaching as an instructional strategy. This is using, deploying, meaning you need teacher diversity, you need individuals who understand culture outside of theirs, which is embracively culture of Black culture, Hispanic culture, even Asian Pacific culture, not just the Anglo-Saxon culture that has been repeated to us and lied to us while we were in school. It is now time for our students to make sure that they see themselves not only as the individuals in the classroom, but in the material that we put in front of them. Because why? Our students deserve more. Y'all gotta pay attention. Now I gotta see you walk the floor and check in on everybody. I gotta put my teacher hat on for real. How do we move forward? Delaware teaching workforce does not reflect the student population. Black students make up 30% of the student body, yet 13% are Black educators. Studies show that students perform better academically and socially when they have teachers who share their racial background. To bridge this gap, we need targeted recruitment, mentorship, and after-school programs and retention efforts for teachers of color. Why? Because our students what? All right, be paying attention now. Currently, I am working with state and national partners like Rodell and the Hunt Institution to use the data to create policies to address these inequities and to create and pass legislation like HB 15, which is school-based learning for early learners. This is to encourage developmentally appropriate learning methods from pre-K to third grade, and it's a culturally inclusive instructional strategy. As well, it is re-emphasized that our students' nutritional and health is at the front of all of this. Do you learn well if you're hungry? Can you sit in a meeting and pay attention if you're hungry? That's why a lot of y'all was late coming back in here, because you was hungry. And that's why I introduced HB 125 last year. It is, for the individuals that don't know what that bill is Universal School Meals Bill. It's to ensure that all of our students have access to the proper nutrition while they are in our school buildings. 1 in 7 children in Delaware face food insecurity. And what we're finding is that it's not decreasing. It is steadily increasing day by day. And how do we address that? We talk about student outcomes. Shame is becoming, at this point, academic shame, intelligence shame, where students, they don't want to perform at their highest potential. My students, Miss Moore, why do you say we have to get 100? Because I believe in reaching all my potential. But the other classes say we only need to reach 75%. Then we look at our data. We look at our student outcomes. How are we pushing and motivating them? A lot of our students, and I would tell you, it's our students of color, who are struggling. Why? Because we don't have inclusive learning strategies. We don't have inclusive curriculum. They don't see themselves. Every student learns differently, and that's okay. And the students have to be encouraged to know that you don't have to learn the same way as the person sitting inside of you, but it is your teacher's job to figure out which way can I get you to meet these goals. Another call to action is that we need to encourage school boards to enforce HB 198. If you don't know what HB 198, former State Representative Sherry Dorsey Walker had passed this legislation encouraging Black history to be taught in all Delaware schools. Let me say it again, all Delaware schools. It is not being done throughout the state because it's not being enforced and encouraged to do so, which call your local school board member and ask them, is this being done? Do they have a committee tasked to do with the work to make sure that it is being taught with fidelity? Not sitting here washing our history away, but making sure that our students understand Black history is American history, no matter who is carrying the narrative. Why? Because our students what? All right. Another call to action is a firm commitment to recruiting and retaining Black educators through initiatives. And this is a call to action to the teachers union, the charter school network, and school district leaders. Be intentional to who you are bringing into the classrooms. Be intentional about the population you are advocating for and making sure that you have individuals who is committed to making sure that our students can dream without limitations on their potential. Another thing that we can do is enact the work of the Public Education Funding Commission, that who these individuals are working to create an equitable funding system, which there is a meeting this evening, so please connect and make sure you join that, because the only way to fix the system we are seeing is by changing how we are funding our schools. Again, I am emphasizing that here in Delaware, we have an antiquated education system that needs an overhaul, and it starts with how our units are funded. Schools are not getting the resources that they need because of how we're allocating the money. Again, I link it back to the panel who came before me. If you saw, most of the elementary health-based learning clinics are in northern Newcastle. Why? So when we talk about funding, there are real gaps of how these things are addressed. And one way that we can fix that is making sure that we are working on the funding. Why? Because our students what? All right. There's a lot of things that we can do. But the first thing is, if I had to do a call to action to everyone in this room, it's making sure that whatever background you come from, you're advocating. You're advocating in that area, whether it's health, law enforcement, anything. They all have a direct connection to our education system. School to prison pipeline is real. So if we start talking about our data, we have to understand why is that. As I just finished and restarted the School Climate and Student Behavior Task Force, unfortunately, our students of color, are the ones that are getting disciplined at higher rates. Whether it's because of the lack of cultural identity and trying to understand and work with them and try to understand what respect means culturally for us and how to talk to us, how to interact with us, how not to play like you're scared, but being there in an intentional manner to show up each and every day. Delaware education system has long struggled to serve all students equitably, and the data makes it clear that Black students face systemic barriers in academic achievement. Our outdated funding model, the lack of educator diversity initiatives, and inequitable resources continue to widen those opportunity gaps. But we aren't just here to dwell on our challenges, as we all know what they are. But here we stand today, we come together to drive change. That is through efforts like HB 198, Black History Education, HB 15, Play-Based Learning for Young Learners, and HB 125 universal meals, we are starting to make strides. And the only way we could do this is by working together towards a more inclusive and supportive system. How do we do that? I can't echo this more because I see the responses in my students when I'm in front of them versus my other colleagues. Not that they don't try, because they do. And educators right now are doing the best that they can. But having a teacher of color, whether it's Black or Hispanic or even of a different background, is ultimately important. So teacher, educator diversity, mental health resources, and equitable funding, and addressing food insecurity will ensure that every child, regardless race or zip code, has the opportunity to thrive. This is just not about policy. It's about people, the people that are sitting in this room today. It is about our students, our educators, and Delaware's future. As our students, what? Y'all not saying it with your chest. Y'all need some K-Dot energy. Our students need what? We have the power to transform our schools into spaces where all students are seen, supported, and are prepared for success. By working together, legislators, educators, parents, community advocates, we can turn these inequities into opportunities for progress. So, I'm really doing good on time. Y'all don't get this back. Lastly, I will say, let's commit to bold action, equitable policies, and a shared vision for a stronger and more just education. Because why, everyone? Our students what? And nothing less. Thank you.
Our kids what? Our kids what? Can we thank our education panelists for holding it down for her education? She did an awesome job. That's the teacher in her came out. Love it. So at this time, will you help me welcome the Housing, Infrastructure, and Environments panelists to the stage? We have Senator Marie Pickney's in the room. Come on, Marie. I know. You can bring your snack up here. It's all good. And Representative Kendra Johnson is going to join her on the panel. And they're going to get started with the conversation, and someone possibly may jump in, a surprise. We'll see. So let's celebrate them. Come on, let's do it, girl. Black girl magic. Let's go. We need a little, I should give you a little theme song.
Is the mic on? The mic is on. Okay. So clearly, when you make a series of unfortunate events like that, you need to take a breath. So how about we all just collectively take a breath? And don't tell nobody you saw me walk up on the stage like that. Hi, Representative Johnson.
Hello, Senator Pinckney. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm just dandy.
Me too. It's so nice to be here with all these Black faces.
Isn't it beautiful? Beautiful. All those different shades. Lovely.
You know, one thing I love about us the most is that when we're in a space, it could be this many of us and nobody looks alike. We all got different color outfits on, different hair. We all come in here looking like ourselves. I love that. So I am really excited to speak with you this afternoon. I have to thank Representative Johnson, who jumped in and joined me at the last minute, because that's what we do for each other. I appreciate you.
Listen, because we are unapologetically Black, and we support one another, okay?
That's what we do.
All right.
You know, like Kendrick at the Super Bowl.
Ooh.
Like the Eagles winning the Super Bowl.
Ooh.
Like Beyonce going on tour and taking all my money. So we have the pleasure of talking with you all about housing issues today. myself and Senator Lockman chaired the subcommittee under the African American Task Force on Housing and Infrastructure. So that's why I have the honor of speaking with you. And Representative Johnson is.
And I am the chair of housing in the House. So, yeah, I know a little bit about housing. And I wonder, like, should I start, because I know I'm going to get, a little riled up, and then have you bring me back down, and all that.
I like that because that's not usually our relationship. It's usually the other way around. So I like it.
I know. When I talk about housing, like I get really charged, right? And why do I get charged? Because in our beautiful state, we have a housing crisis. And the reality is, it's not just our state. There's so many other states here, right? And I get so angry and sad and emotional because I think about affordable housing. And I think about how people are NIMBY, not in my backyard, and not even fully understanding what affordable housing means. Affordable housing could be affordable housing for that educator that Rep. Moore just talked about, right? That's affordable housing. Affordable housing could be being able to afford your rent when you work full time. Right. That's affordable housing. Affordable housing, as I sit and I see my friend Mr. Walls out there in yellow, could be affordable housing for our vets. Right? I mean, I always think about, because I'm a geek, I'm going to tell y'all now, okay? I'm silly, but I'm a geek. I always think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. First thing I think about, right? Got the little triangle. That's the geek in me, right? And what does he tell us? He's like, at the bottom of that triangle is your foundation. That is your home. That is your food. Guess what? Clap it up. If you don't have that, you cannot achieve self-actualization. The top of that pyramid. If I don't have somewhere to live, I can't get to work. If I don't have somewhere to live, I can't take my kids to your classroom. Deep cleansing breath. I told y'all I get riled up. I'm going to come back to center because I ain't going to take up all the time.
How about I jump in there?
Go ahead. You jump in while I breathe. Go ahead.
But I like where you went because as you started talking, I started thinking that we need to take a step back and talk about the importance of housing and what housing impacts. When Senator Lockman joins us, I was thinking about her being on her way, and I was remembering one of the first conversations that her and I had, and we were talking about, what is it that determines a person's outcomes more, education or housing? And the answer is absolutely housing, right? Not that education is important, right, more, it matters, but your housing determines your education. Your housing determines the air that you breathe. Your housing determines your access to clean water. Your housing then later can determine the trajectory of your career. And so if you don't have access to safe and affordable housing, you already have several knocks against you. And so when we were working on the infrastructure and environment subcommittee, what we realized, we thought we were going to be talking about so many issues, Senator Lockman and I. But what we found is that every one of the recommendations that we made came back to where a person lives and came back to their access to housing, because that determined the infrastructure of your life, whether you have walkable streets or whether you have to jump out of the way of moving cars coming down the street. You know that the backyard of your house leads to a major
one,
road.
I know.
And it determines the air that you breathe, like I said. So I grew up in Newcastle off of the Route 9 corridor. And if you know anything about the Route 9 corridor, you know that in that area we have some of the highest cancer outcomes in the state because of the pollution, the air pollution. I love this man over here. He is the hype.
I know, yes. Yes.
I love this. But and so in our committee, what we talked about was how to increase access to housing. And so one of the things I do want to point out that we have, and I was a product of, I was able to take advantage of a first-time home buyers program. I bought my home in Bear, right up the street from you, in I think 2017. And I used the first-time home buyers program to help me pay the down payment on my house because it was a lot of money and I didn't have it. When I bought my home in 2017, my home was $178,000. I thought I was doing something, y'all. I was like 27 buying a house I could afford. And I'm still very proud of that because homeownership is an amazing accomplishment. However, 7 years later, my home is valued at almost $300,000. And I think about that often, not to toot my horn, because I can't cash in on that. I still have much to pay. But I think about it because I think about what 27-year-old today is going to be able to buy a $300,000 home.
Say it again. Say it again. Back.
And I wasn't doing anything special. I was a social worker. I worked at the hospital, and I had a modest income, and I was able to purchase a home. And I had significant student loan debt. So one of the things that Senator Lockman and I talked about under our housing conversations was a program that we've actually seen in Maryland that it's called SMART, and I don't remember all the details. It's been a little while since I've had a chance to look at this again, but it is specifically for young folks looking to become homeowners who have significant amounts of student loan debt, and it allows them to turn that student loan debt into a positive based on the payments that they've made towards their student loans. And so that's one of the things that we're looking to try to bring the things like accessory dwelling units and everything, a lot of those issues about how we create more space in the space that we already have are municipal issues. And so as a state legislature, we can address them. And we have, I have to shout out my colleague, Senator Huxtable from down Sussex.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is nice to be with you and nice to see so many familiar, beautiful faces here. I will just introduce myself briefly because I don't know all of you, and talk a little bit about the work that we did on the Infrastructure and Environment Subcommittee, but really just talk about housing, right? Focusing on the housing, because we had a pretty expansive mandate. So my name is Tizzy Lockman, and I am state senator. I represent the 3rd district, so I have the most of the city of Wilmington, of the 21 of us, and of the 3 of us that touch the city. And I did not come into this role necessarily with a focus on housing. In fact, I think I came in very much with a focus on education, and I felt that education, I still do, was like the most fundamental policy area that one could improve upon in order to uplift all of the folks that we work with and represent and want to see succeed. So I had sort of this chicken and egg debate with a friend and colleague of mine about which one was more fundamental, education or housing. And I love to tell her all the time, she's the executive director of Housing Alliance Delaware, but this was when we were carpooling to grad school. I like to tell her that I think she won. As much as I am still completely dedicated to educational uplift and reforming the system that we have, I do think housing is first, is it not? You know, you've got to get people in safe, quality home environments in order for them to stand on that foundation and do all of the other things that we want them to be able to do, go into school and learn, go to work and be productive, and so on and so forth. So I think when I first went out and, you know, knocked doors and talked to the people that I represent, the conclusion I came to was we need to focus on education, we need to focus on public safety, we need to focus on economic opportunity. And for me, the economic opportunity portion of my agenda that I try to execute on behalf of the people that I represent has really honed in on housing more than anything, because we have serious housing stock issues in the 3rd district, just as we have serious housing stock issues throughout our beautiful state. And I do think that we have done a better and better job over the 6 years that I've been serving to center that issue. When I started in the state Senate, we did not have a housing committee, so we formed a housing committee to show that we knew this needed to be elevated to one of our top issues. Now it's the Housing and Land Use Committee in the Senate to show that we have a broader understanding of some of what inhibits our ability to create the housing stock that we need. And in the context of the Infrastructure and Environment Subcommittee, we covered a variety of topics that I still would like to see us kind of keep bundled on some level. You know, the infrastructure hearkened, of course, to housing, but it also was talking about transportation networks. It was talking about, you know, issues of environmental justice and where your nice home is located and whether or not you're going to be exposed to all kinds of toxins. All of those kinds of things. Even, you know, are we making sure that places are wired for Wi-Fi and what have you? So we were really very expansive there, and I think where we were, and I think maybe still are in the legislature in terms of our priorities, we really leaned into tenant protections. I think that was something that very clearly bubbled up to the surface as a place where we could do what government should be doing when we're at our best, which is helping people do what they cannot do for themselves. So when we have folks who, you know, are getting into the eviction pipeline, so to speak, are they really getting the legal support and advice that they need, not just to get steamrolled by it? And particularly in the district that I represent, I was just looking at some data this morning because we had a housing meeting that was written up, being closed doors and exclusive, but we were just trying to wrap our heads around some basics. That in Wilmington, we see more than anywhere else in the state, people listing eviction as a prime reason for were losing their housing. So we focused on that. Yes. Oh my goodness. For the entire panel or just for me? Oh heavens. All right. So I'm going to stop talking and we're going to have a conversation. What else? I was getting the hook. Is that over or under? We're still under. 30 seconds. Okay. Oh my goodness. So what I have learned in leading into tenant protections and wanting to do more to bolster, folks' prospects as tenants is that we can only do so much if we don't have more housing stock available. There's only so much we can bring rent down or keep rent stabilized or keep people housed. And so, as I believe you've already heard, that is where we are now trying to become the experts and get the things done.
Awesome. Can we thank our awesome panelists for that lively discussion? Thank you so much. Well, we're going to round out the afternoon with the State of Black Delaware, hosted by none other than myself. And so I want to let you know this is a very informal conversation. We're just going to kick it back like friends that we are. So would you help me welcome? Well, come on, give me a little bit of that. Let's give them a vibe as they're coming up. This is our last panel. It's the State of Black Delaware. So help me welcome Representative Stephanie T. Bolden, my NCBW sisters in the building. My dear girlfriend, one of my besties, Miss Flora McKendall, president of the Delaware NAACP, newly appointed president for the state. We have none other than Miss Jennifer Tompkins. She is the CEO and president of the Metropolitan Women's and Urban League. We have Veer Archbold, who is the site director of the DuPont Experimental Station. And we have one of the greatest women in our state, Miss Jane Hovington's in the room. Yeah, give it up for her. She's the president of the Richard Allen Coalition. Yes, that's legacy all day, baby. We have Dr. Kenwood. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce this, and I know your daughters very well. My apologies. That's my campus community family. Dr. Kenwood Boyton, who is the JD Assistant Dean of the College of Humanities and Education and Social Sciences right here at Delaware State University. Mom, can you grab my phone right here? My questions are on my phone. So today's title is very strong. It's a very unapologetically Black lands differently for a lot of different people. And so I want my friends and my panelists to really just take a moment to answer the question, what does it mean to be unapologetically Black in Delaware? As we learn that Delaware is the 6th Black state in the country. And I'm not sure that I feel that way all the time, right? So what does it mean to be unapologetically Black in Delaware? I'm a teacher by heart, so I'll call you out, or we can just, as you feel led by the Spirit.
Good afternoon, everyone. For me, it's a lot different. And I see a lot of seniors out there, although I'm not a senior. I think it's history. You have to know first from which you came. And if you don't know that, then we're going to be lost and you don't know where you're going. I see a lot of new ideas, progressive people, progressiveness going forward, and I'm so proud of the young people that we have in the General Assembly now. For 8 years, I sat in the General Assembly as the only African-American female, and on City Council, I sat there for 8 years as the only African-American female. I have been in office for 34 years now, and I'm the longest serving African-American female in the state. However, that's not my legacy. My legacy is what the Lord put me here for in order to do the will of the people and to serve the will of the people. And that's what I've been doing. I don't want to take recognition for this, that, or the other, but I do know who came before me. And the purpose of that is why I'm here and why all of you are here today in reference to this. So Black history and Black people, and here in the state of Delaware, I have a whole bunch of history I can go through, but I'm going to let the panel speak, and then I want to come back and give you some challenges because I think you really need them as well.
Good afternoon, everybody. Somewhere I read that I was fearfully and wonderfully made in his image, and before I was formed in my mother's womb, that he had called me apart and set me for a divine purpose. And so because of that, I am unapologetically Black, with audacity, with authority, and audaciously, I am unapologetically Black. And because God has set me apart for a time such as this, I know that I can't shrink and I can't cower in these spaces, and that I must show up in my identity because I'm a reflection of his love and a reflection of his divine purpose. And so for me, being unapologetically Black is knowing who I am, knowing that my identity is rooted in my Father, which is Christ, and knowing that because of what he has put inside of me, that I must go out, go forward, and be able to fight for the rights, for the liberties, for the freedoms, for the justice, the equity, the equality of my brothers and sisters. So that to me is being unapologetically Black. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Tompkins, and I am the president and CEO of the Urban League. And for all of you who may not know, the Urban League, we are a 100+ years civil rights organization, very much like the NAACP. And so I certainly echo my sisters who are up here on this panel, but I would add that being unapologetically Black is also speaking truth to power. And so when we get these seats at the table, we need to be able to ask the question, what are you doing for Black people? How are you pouring back into our communities? How are our children being impacted? That's what we have to do. And so for me, in that space in which I sit at, obviously you sit with corporations, you sit at different tables, and you have to be able to ask that question unapologetically, what are you doing for Black folk?
Well, I'm sorry, my name is Jane Hovington, for anyone who doesn't know who I am. But I have to amen to everything because as Congress Representative Bolden said, we have to know from whence we came so that we can know where we're going. And truly, the audacity that Flora spoke of, we need to have it. Because when we walk into a room and when we see something going on and we sit down to the table, we don't have to apologize for anything because I feel that I have a right to have the same respect. And I learned that as a child, that when I walk into a room, you have to respect me the same way that you respect my counterpart. And by no means am I going to step back and be subtle and be quiet and everything, because if I have something to say, I'm going to say it because that's what we're supposed to do. So that's why I feel that I'm unapologetically Black, because I have a purpose. God's put me here to do it, and he gave me the audacity to do what I'm doing, and he gives me the strength. And many times I will say to you that I've spoken, and they said, well, what did you say? I said, I can't tell you, but I know the spirit within me knew exactly what I was saying and guided and directed me in everything that I said. Amen?
I want to ditto everything that has been said. It's hard to follow up, but to me, being unapologetically Black, and I'm going to go back to what you said about history, I will never hide my history. I will never diminish it. I am a guardian of the archives that have got us to where we are today. I'm going to make sure my students know their history, and I'm going to make sure this nation knows that it owes African Americans a debt, right? So to be unapologetically Black means to understand the power that we have in this country, which is why things would not be under threat if we did not have the power that we actually have. And I'm going to just give one quick little aside. At night, I was doing some homework to get ready for this panel, and I found a story in 1922. African-American women, who were one of the largest voting bodies amongst African-Americans at that time, defeated a Republican who wanted to vote against an anti-lynching bill in the state of Delaware. When you think about that, we've always been a threat. Always, right? And so to be unapologetically Black means to understand the power we have in our community, right, to change the course of the history of this nation, like we've done so many times before.
It's really hard to follow all of this. What I can say is, being part of DuPont, being part of the Chamber of Commerce of Newcastle County, and being in the room where a lot of economic decisions are made, what I can bring is the perspective of myself, right? An African American perspective, and ask the tough questions. Why is everybody included, right? There's a tremendous amount of growth that's happening in this state. Actually, one of two states that are growing in the Northeast. The question is it being distributed equally? And being where I am and in the places that I said I could ask the questions, is that growth being distributed equally?
I love it. So I'm going to pass this to Flora and Jen and Ms. Tompkins for this next question. I love it. That's my sister. I love it. That's a good sister girl named Jen. So, let's have some real talk for a moment. When President Trump got into office, he made some immediate changes. And, I wasn't moved by any of those changes, mostly because I have a faith in God. But secondly, I sit at tables that allow me to have discussions. But Flora and Jen, when we go sit in these rooms, I've been in rooms with both of you, people that look like us are not sitting at these tables. And so we're doing a lot of community organizing. We're doing a lot of giving people stipends to go out and get people to vote for people. We're doing a lot of, let me pay you a couple dollars to tell your life experience. But then we're not sitting at these tables where they're making decisions about us. And one thing that this woman right here taught me is nothing about me without me. No policy change can happen that has me, my Black and brown history tied to it, and you don't have a conversation with me. Dr. Boynton, as a higher education professor and all the good stuff that you're doing here at Del State, I'm sure you see the problem solvers. How can we do a better job in beginning to implement that? And where is this gap coming from? Why do we not want to talk about Black history? Why do we have to listen to everything else but our Black history?
I want to give my honest opinion, but I was very surprised. A few weeks ago, I was down in Mississippi on a civil rights education tour, and I found out Mississippi spends like the least amount of money on education, like $8,000 per year per student. But they have one of the most robust Black history programs by law in the school system. And I said, wow, this is Trump country. How did this happen? But this was Black parents demanding that their students be taught their history, and not just African American students, because in my mind years ago, I was like, well, we could just have an after school program. We open up our churches. We don't need folks to teach our kids. We could do it ourselves. The missing link, though, is other folks need to know our history. And I do distinctly remember growing up when Black history was Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. And I thought Rosa Parks was a tired old seamstress that refused to get off the bus. I was never taught that she was a political activist and a rape investigator and put her life on the line. So these things that we have in the code now in Delaware to require this type of teaching needs to be mandated by folks from the outside, by parents. To your point about I think you said your godson, who someone needs to say, it's Black History Month, what are you doing? Because plenty of parents from the other side will come up and say, why are you teaching that? We need to demand that these things be taught in our schools, because I think once people have a starting point, that lack of, or that sort of inferiority complex that some of us grew up with, the imposter syndrome, being the only one in the room, that just washes away. Because you realize you have a proud legacy, that you are standing on the shoulders of giants, people who made a way when there was absolutely no way, right? People who sat at lunch counters and got coffee thrown on them and cigarettes. And these are like 19-year-olds in Nashville and Greensboro. So then you get a student in college that says, well, that's me, that's my history, that's my legacy. I can be proud of something, but if you never know it, what are you proud of? Right? And some of my students will say, well, Martin Luther King, that's ancient history. But if it was such ancient history, why are we trying to erase it? It's scary, right? That history is a threat to the power structure because they know the strength of African Americans in this country.
And I'm going to put a little commercial, then I'm going to continue to talk about this. Everyone in this room needs to be at your school board meeting. I don't care if you go for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, there is strength in seeing you come, because what happens is, although you may not have anything to say, when you go to that school board meeting, they're nervous. They're like, oh goodness, what's going on in the community? Hey, what's going on? You know, they were in the back and they were talking, they were whispering, they were texting, what's going on? And so you get them having to be more accountable to the decisions that they're making, because the superintendent is the school board is the superintendent's boss. And so the school board puts pressure on the superintendent to ensure that HB 198 is happening, that he's going to begin or she's going to begin to move that way. But if we're just putting it by the wayside, there's no obligation. So get to your school board meeting. You pay taxes there, you done bought a home there, you're renting there, you live in there. Get to your school board meeting. And better yet, run for school board. You can run. May is the elections. Get out there. So I'm going to pass the ball, continue to talk about this with our panelists about HB 198. Colonials is tomorrow.
If I may, specifically when I formed the Legislative Black Caucus, it was for the purpose of looking at legislation that was not applying to people of color here in the state of Delaware. When initially we tried to have a Black Caucus, which consisted of city council people, county council people, and state people. But when you look at the mission statement, it is the Legislative Black Caucus, legislative. So that means it should be legislators, those that are in the House and the Senate. Unfortunately, during times before, we did not have people represented of color in the House and the Senate, enough to form that body. So in 2018, when we got a host of African Americans that came into the House, we were able to form the Legislative Black Caucus. And out of that Legislative Black Caucus, which Senator Brown was the chair during that time, we were able to do the Justice for All agenda. The Justice for All agenda is what looked at the inequities that were here in the state of Delaware. So we formed two groups, the African American Task Force and the Law Enforcement Task Force. And you heard from people today regarding those. It was the economic development, public safety, health and welfare, education, housing, and of course, what we're doing here now to try to sum up what everybody's talking about and the things that are here. There was one thing that was called the, well, first of all, you had Representative Aloe Plant, who worked very diligently, was a state legislator here that got you the Martin Luther King holiday. There was the whipping post that we had removed some time ago down there. And also, when you look at, there were 3 states that never accepted the Emancipation Proclamation. One was Delaware. Do you know the other 2? Maryland and Kentucky. They did an apology for slavery. Maryland did, and Kentucky did because of not having accepted it. In 2011, when I came here, Delaware still had not done an apology for slavery. I was able to get that legislation through, and we finally had that apology. Teaching Black history. This particular piece of legislation came out of the African American Task Force. We had working groups, and we were trying to make sure we had everything in place before we put it out there. From the African American Task Force, we also have now the Racial Consortium. And the Racial Consortium is the one that, part of this program being presented here today, that are going to look at this Black history. When I look at when I questioned how it was being done, I was finding out that different districts were making up their own Black history. That is not acceptable. There should be one Black history agenda and curriculum, and that should be done by the state. So everybody in the state should be teaching the same curriculum and the same agenda. So I want to make sure that you understand that and ask for it and make sure it happens, because you know what can happen when individuals start doing what they want to do. And like you said, school boards, if you're not on that school board, then you don't know what's happening, but they will fix it so they have only what they want to have in there. And this is one of the reasons why we have to stay on education, because they said each one teach one. How many of us are doing that? Our parents, we have 4 generations of parents that have not been taught any history. So how are they supposed to teach their kids? So you have to make sure, this is a priority, to make sure that what is being taught in the schools is correct history. And there's no reason to be ashamed of it. We are the most forgiving people in the world. We have come through slavery. We're all different colors because of the rapes that took place among women. So we cannot forget this, but we have to move forward. And in order to move forward is to know the history, know from which you've come from, and to be able to advance.
Awesome. I just want to say quickly on my soapbox, the late great poet James Baldwin said that to be African American is to be African with no memory and American with no privilege. I read a lot, so I'm going to say again, somewhere I read that the truth sets us free. And the truth is, and it's been said earlier today, that Black history is American history. And so now we have this nationwide phenomenon of dismantling DEI and whitewashing our Black history. And in Delaware, we have this beautiful law on the books. This June will be 4 years that HB 198 was passed, but we still don't have a statewide implementation across all districts. And so I say that now is time. It's been past time, but I say that Delaware needs to be true to what it put on paper. and it needs to meet this moment with a sense of urgency because we know what's happening abroad and across this nation. And so we have this law. We need to utilize it. As you said, Representative Bolden, we need one curriculum. So regardless of whether you're moving from Lake Forest up to Red Clay or from Brandywine down to Capitol, you're getting the same level of education in the spirit and in the intent of the legislation. And so I just want to encourage all of you, contact your representatives, contact your senators, contact like I did, our new governor and our secretary for the Department of Education and say, where are you? How are we going to safeguard this legislation together? Because we have to move beyond symbolism and we need to stop being performative because it was a cute gesture, but that's all it is if we're not going to make sure that it's implemented statewide. And so I'm going to finally say that last night's halftime show was amazing. People have been critiquing it because they couldn't understand things, but I'm going to say this, our students should not have to look at a halftime show and see Kendrick Lamar form an American flag with black bodies to have to decode what Black history means through his message. It should be taught in the classroom. And so we need to fight for that. So if you're a parent, auntie, uncle, whoever you are, if you have kids, if you steward children, if you care about our future, we need to make sure that our kids learn the history so that we don't repeat it. And then we're able to walk in fullness in our future. I'll stop there.
And I just want to add that. What did you say? Go to the school board meetings. They need to see your face at those school board meetings making the demands. And I know for a fact, if more than 5 of you show up at a school board meeting, then they're concerned. So the thing to do is get 10 of you to go to that school board meeting. Oh, 3 is the magic number. I was just informed. But if 10 of you show up at a school board meeting, and of those 10, 3 stand up and say, when are you going to start Black history education in our classroom? I'm here to tell you, they will stand up and take note.
And if I can just add, Dr. Freeman and Covington they are on the racial consortium, and that is what they are doing. So you do have people that are starting to organize and pull this curriculum together. So I'm sure if they want volunteers or somebody else has suggestions, you can always get them. But no, that is a priority, and thank you guys for doing it.
I'm going to shift gears. Is there anything else about Black history that we want to make relevant for our audience? Any comments, anything personal? We're going to come back around, but I'm going to shift gears for a second. So housing is a human right, and in Delaware, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. To go get an apartment, you need first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, and you need excellent credit. You need your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, and everyone else to vouch for you, right? To buy a home, even when you have A1 opportunities for Black folks, it's just been it's a hard thing happening. We go and serve the homeless in our various organizations, and there is so much happening that is leading to addiction because they don't have homes, they can't afford it. And so, we saw something great happen in Newcastle County, and I can talk about him because he's my friend. Governor Meyer has done an amazing job in Newcastle County to do the Hope Center. He took that hotel, and it is a sight to behold. It is amazing. But Kent and Sussex are struggling too. We're struggling. So what can we do? How can we band together as a people in this room, as change makers sitting on this stage and even in the audience? Where do we start with the housing issue? Where do we begin with that? And I'm going to let whoever feels led to just jump right in.
Well, I'm going to say this. In Sussex County, we need to start with our county council. We need to make some changes with the county council in Sussex County, because I'm here to tell you, they're the ones that are controlling the building that's there. They're the ones that are controlling the cost of housing that's coming up in that particular area. And there's funding that's available, but unless they access that funding and utilize the resources that have been made available through HUD and other, there's nothing that the communities are going to do. And I'm here to tell you, I wanted to buy a house. And I laughed at them when they told me the cost of the house because, and I'll share this, when they told me the price of the house, I waited and I asked where my maid and my butler was, because if I'm going to pay that much money for a house, I expected to have a maid and a butler, because it's ridiculous. I mean, the house is just a regular house. It wasn't a mansion, a 5-bedroom, anything. It was just a 3-bedroom house, and they had lost their mind when they expected me to pay that much money for a house.
I would.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
If I could just say about housing, not to add any more on what you said, Miss Jane, but I think a lot of the problem with our leadership, myself included, um, as an NAACP leader, is that a lot of times when we're formulating these discussions about what to do about our community's problem, the problem is the people that are most impacted by the problem are not being invited to the table to have a conversation. And that's a big problem. Those who are most pained by what is happening should have a front seat at the table when these conversations are happening. Because how can you go out and tell me how you're going to fix a problem for me, Rep Bolden? And I know you do this, so this is no slight to you. But I'm just saying, how can you tell me you're going to fix a problem for me? You haven't came down my block. You haven't invited me to a town hall or a meeting, but when it's election time, you're knocking down my door, whispering sweet nothings, asking for a vote or texting for $2 or $5 towards your campaign. And then we, those of us who know better, don't finish the job when we don't hold them accountable. And so to every leader, whether elected, appointed, whether you're with a private organization, nonprofit organization, this is something as we move forward with our advocacy work that we're calling people to the table who are most impacted or pained by what is going on. And I'll just stop there.
I think, one of the things we also have to address with this housing issue is the fact that there's been no wage growth in America since the early 80s. And so you made the point about having first and last month's rent, security deposit. I remember when I bought a house, my father asked me, well, how much are you putting down? And I said, you don't have to put anything down to buy a house. And he said, you're not putting down 20%? Because when he bought a house in the 60s, that was the common thing to do, which you could do, even with a minimum wage job. But now it's impossible. I think about some of my students who are graduating, and when they tell me they're afraid of adulting, and I laugh, I'm like, what is adulting? What does that mean? And they're like, we're not going to be able to buy a house. We may not be able to buy a car, right? How am I going to do this when I'm only making $60,000 a year, right? So, I mean, we have to figure out how do we address that wage issue, but especially in the Black community where it's even less. Correct.
That's real talk. Before we transition to the panelists giving their final words and remarks, I do want to acknowledge that our student voice today, he couldn't be with us today. He's not feeling well. But there's a question that we wanted to pose to him that we'll let the panel kind of take over. Social media has taken over the world. Before we look at the news, we go to social media. And so it has its good and bad points, but it's really changed how we activate and we do activism and, canceling people, things of that nature. So where's the balance as we are in this liberation movement, being unapologetically Black, with a new president here? What is the balance with social media in this movement as we move forward the next 4 years in this administration?
I'll say really quickly, and then I'm going to ask my sister Jen to have a word because I know she has a word on this. I said a few weeks ago, I was at an event, a breakfast, and I talked about how we are so irresponsible with our social media. We are not being good stewards of our social media, of our influence, of our ability to be able to encourage people. I think that it's really important to answer your question, Sade. We have to stop participating in this widespread dissemination of misinformation a lot of times that has not been fact checked, and we share it for likes, we share it because it feels good, and what it's causing is a level of divisiveness that we can't escape. And so at the end of the day, we may not love, we may not like at all what we're seeing happening at a national political climate. But at the end of the day, it's going to take across the aisle conversations. It's going to take PhDs talking to GEDs and poor people with white people and Black people with white people and rich people with poor. We all have to have a conversation. We all have to be willing to work with one another. And I would say that on our social media, it should reflect that. We can't just talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion when it makes us feel good, but yet our social media excludes people because they don't make us feel good all the time. And so just think about that with social media, just being responsible with your social media. I'm on a fast from it right now since the end of December because it just wrecks my soul to see. And when I logged in to see our legislators sometimes, or even our local city of Dover councilmen on there talking about, what they don't agree with everyone here probably knows with our Congresswoman Sarah McBride and picking on her and talking about, you're a man still and all of these things, and people are looking up to you because yet we go into the schools and we tell the kids, get along, don't fight. But yet we don't demonstrate that behavior when we're in the halls of Legislative Hall. We're not demonstrating that behavior in boardrooms. We're not demonstrating that behavior when we are having conversations in our community. So I would just say, please, please think about before you post, being responsible with social media.
I would also, say that social media is also a great tool for a movement. And again, I echo my sister here who said we have to use it responsibly. But what we also have to do, we have to be very careful as a generation, right, to not demonize social media so much because it creates that larger wedge in between the next generation, right? So how are we actually utilizing social media to be able to further movements, right? And so for this is what we're in right now, whether we like it or not, right? Children, if you go outside your neighborhood, is very few neighborhoods where babies are playing outside now, right? And so they're on their phone. So how can we reach? How can we reach the masses and create movements? At the Urban League, we have a young professionals organization, and the majority of connection that we have with our young professionals is through social media. And that's because it is the biggest channel that we could use to reach the masses. So yes, definitely make sure that we use social media responsibly, but make sure that we also are using social media as a whole because that is a communication channel in which we will be reaching the masses.
I love it. I love it. I love it. As we wrap up, Mr. Veer, what is we get bad news all day long. We have to watch that stuff to be abreast of it, but I'm a hopeful girl. I just believe that anything is possible. I believe that our future is brighter. I'm not moved by the circumstances. I know in which my anchor holds. But for you, what is your hopes for the future as we end our talk today, our time together? What is your hopes for the future in terms of being unapologetically Black in this current climate?
I'm extremely hopeful for the future, right? I have insight into what's coming, what's potentially coming. There's literally hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars that's going to be invested in this state and in this region. The question is, are we all prepared to take advantage of that, right? There's going to be a massive turnover in terms of tradespeople, from pipe fitters to electricians. There's a growth of life science in North Wilmington, like we haven't seen. It's once in a generation. You have first state hydrogen coming online that's going to change the way energy is supplied to the state. I'm very, very hopeful. The question is, are we prepared to take a part in that economy, right? And that's what I spend a lot of time thinking about: workforce development, making sure that we're prepared to take part of that, because that will answer all the questions. If you're making $150,000, $200,000 a year, you don't care if it's a $400,000 house, right? You're going to buy it because you can afford it. So I'm extremely hopeful.
Well, I was looking on good old Uncle Joe's Facebook page the other day, and he had a scripture on there. I said, "Oh, what Joe talking about today?" And Joe said, "I don't know where it's from, but it says, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging for bread." So it doesn't matter what's happening today. It doesn't matter what's happening tomorrow. It doesn't matter what you left your office to come here and do today. For I've never seen the righteous. Everyone in here is God's righteous. I don't care where you believe and what you stand on. When you walked into this room, you became a part of the righteousness of God. And because of that, you won't lack anything in this season. So don't be fearful. Don't be moved by it. Just know that someone greater has gone before you, because another scripture says that when the enemy comes in like a flood, that God will lift up a standard. So you be encouraged. I'm excited. We're going to welcome my sister, the director of this great work, to come and close us out, Dr. Asua. She did a great job today. Can we thank this awesome panel, my homies and friends, my brothers and sisters? Thank you so much. She's going to close us out with final remarks.
Just before. Come, and I see a lot of legislators here, and I understand what this young lady said. And believe me, I don't know if any of you know who Sarge is, and I see
one of the chairs of Sarge here and some of the other people, but they're trying to do something. We're trying to work on things. But all I ask as a Sussex County is when all of our legislators start working and start making changes, don't forget Sussex County. Because don't make sure that you come down below the canal and help us out because we need your help. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so very much for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is our first effort under the leadership of Senator Darius Brown to come together to have this forum, an opportunity for everyone to speak, and most importantly, to celebrate Delaware Legislative Black Caucus and their successes and what they have done. So please welcome or join me in just congratulating the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus. This session, they have the largest number of members of the caucus, and then they have leadership roles. Speaker of the House, Melissa Minor Brown, the House Majority Leader, Carrie Evelyn Harris, the Senate Whip, that is Tizzy Lockman. I'm missing one other person. In leadership. Anyway, yes, the of JFC, leaders in all the different committees. So again, the leadership of the caucus is doing well, and they are our voice in the legislature. So I want to also thank everyone who's on the program today. You all were amazing. This was an opportunity again for us to hear the issues, learn what has been taking place, and then to become involved. We just can't sit for an afternoon and feel like we've done something. We must get involved. Join the different committees are out there. Go to the different hearings and meetings. And I promise you, when they see your face, I used to work on Capitol Hill, and when I came into a building, into a meeting, why is she here? It wasn't bad, but it put them on notice for them to realize that someone is watching, someone is holding them accountable. So that's what we need to do to make sure that we are the voice, not only for African Americans and being unapologetically Black, but for all people of color here in the state. It is very important that we all work together. That one stick will break, but put 6 or 7 sticks together, it's harder to break. So we need to stand together and be a voice for the voiceless. I also want to thank the people who helped plan this conference. Christella, please stand. Thank you very much. And we also have members of our rec staff, our former members. Michael, who's taking the pictures here, Michael Pierce. Jordan Spencer, who is our rec ambassador. And Michael and Jordan have also taken the lead on our social media accounts and helping our students here on campus to be a part of our rec team to get the word out so we can make sure we get the next generation involved in civil and justice issues. So thank you all very much. Thank you to Shelvia Draper, who is not here, but she's been instrumental to helping us. And I also want to thank Delaware State University, one of our premier sponsors, Dr. Tony Allen. We have James Lernerman, who helped with the DSU events, Thomas Johnson and a copy center, Darius Godwin for the recording of today's events, Jillian Brooks of Sodexo Catering, and Amber of Couture Decor, who helped with all of the backdrops that we had today. So again, thank you all for making this wonderful. And I must also thank our chairman of the Racial Equity Consortium, Dr. Freeman Williams. Please stand. And Ms. Jane Hovington, who's our vice chair, please stand. And would all members of the Racial Equity Consortium please stand? We had a few that were here earlier. Thank you so much. I just want to thank you all for your dedication, your participation in REC. Your commitment is making a real difference in the lives of people of color in the state of Delaware. And in addition to Delaware State University, we have, of course, the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus, who has been a sponsor, the Racial Equity Consortium, as well as the Metro Wilmington Urban League. Thank you, Jen, for being a sponsor for this conference here today. If you have not already done so, please like, follow, share, whatever it is, social media for the Racial Equity Consortium. We are the political voice of the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus. We were formed through their recommendation to help implement all of the recommendations from the African American Task Force, as well as provide new policy for them to do. In addition, we put on programs and events to help educate the public about what the work that they are doing. So I really would want you all to like and share and follow for different events that we're having. There are things happening in March dealing with the strength of a Black woman. We're doing a Black Family Expo, Wellness Expo. We are meeting to talk about how all the different organizations in the state that deal with civil rights and racial justice, how we can come together to talk about the issues that are going on federally. While some of the executive orders have now been challenged in the court, what happens? What are we doing? We can't play defense, we must be on offense. So we're going to have those meetings, and we would like you all to, if you have comments or questions or something you want the Racial Equity Consortium to do, please send us an email, go to our website. On the screen there, you see the evaluation for today's event. Please, a QR code, please take that picture, QR code, and fill out the evaluation. We will also be sending something in the email. So if you register today and you did not give us your email address, please do so that we can make sure that we keep in contact with you. And finally, the other QR code is a donation code. This work, we're funded through the state legislature, our General Assembly. However, we want to do a whole lot of things, and we want you all to partner with us. So if you feel like you want to, or you have a little extra change that folds, doesn't matter how much it is, please do donate, because every little bit helps. So again, I thank all of you all for being here, and again, thank Darius Brown in his absence, and of course, our leader, Representative Stephanie T. Bolden, for terrific. For all that she has done to be not only a mentor to me, but a leader here in our state. So thank you. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
First African American female to represent Sussex County. She is also a member, is not able to be with us here today. So we ask that you keep her in your prayers because she works very diligently and works hard and puts us all on notice about everything that's needed for Sussex County. So it's Estelle Parker Selby, first woman African American ever from Sussex County. All you people, Sussex County, give her a hand and pray for her. A piece of Black history.
So again, I bid you all a good afternoon, and I thank you again for all that you all are doing, and I appreciate who you are. Thank you. I have it right here in my notes. My sister, my friend, Sade Truitt, thank you. She held double duty today as the MC as well as the moderator for the last panel, so thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, good afternoon. Let's take a picture here, our panel.